everyone, welcome back to Studio 33 Art by Kay. Well, today's the day that I'm going to do the long-awaited video on how I create my waves when I'm doing a ocean pour. Now I always just paint my tile or my, usually it's a cheese board. I paint it and then I resin over it, and then I create the waves with some of the white, either the Alumilite or the just resin pigment pastes. So today I've just got this little tile, which normally I wouldn't be doing for this, but this is so that you can see the actual waves and what the lacing looks like. And I've just painted it dark so that you'll get the difference between the white and the dark showing through, so hopefully you can see the pattern. Normally, as I say, I would be doing this on a cheese board that I would have painted with beautiful aquas and greens and so on. So the first thing I want to mention is, of course, safety equipment. Now make sure you read the safety instructions of whatever resin you use and go online and make sure that you do study that. But in short, make sure you use nitrile gloves. They're designed to be used with chemicals. Have good ventilation. Wear a respirator when resining. And if you're sanding your resin, make sure you're using a mask that's for dust particles. When you're doing the resin, you have to be wearing a respirator that's for chemical vapors. They suggest that you wear goggles. I always have my glasses on. And wear an apron and cover your arms so that if any resin does get on you, it won't be touching your skin, for those of you who have very sensitive skins. I always use baby wipes to clean up, just the normal baby wipes. They're the ones I'm using at the moment, and they're great for cleaning up my resin. You can also use some isopropyl alcohol to clean off your equipment, but I find those little baby wipes are just great. And also protect your floor if you're in an area where you might spill some resin on the floor, and your shoes as well, as much as possible. If you do just spill something, a little bit of resin, you can wipe it off very easily with one of those baby wipes. So the resin I'm going to use today is the Platinum Art Class. So it's not art resin, it's art class, Platinum Art Class. Now this resin has been advertised as being perfect for wave and lace effects, and I found it is good for that. It has a heat resistance up to 100 degrees. Now this one is measured by weight, 1 part A, 1 part B. Most of the resins I've used have been measured out by volume, usually 1 to 1. Sometimes it's 2 to 1. So always make sure you read the instructions. And this one sets up very quickly, so I only have a 21-minute working time before it starts to get hot and set up. So I have to work fairly fast, but the beauty of that is if you are doing a board and you want to do a second wave, which I always do, you can get that second wave done within the same day. So if you're using this to use in a little bit of a mould, don't do a thick mould because otherwise it will get very hot. It can even start steaming, which I've actually or smoking, I should say, not steaming. And if you leave that in so that it's too deep, because of the chemical reaction that's going on there. So make sure you don't sort of have it too deep in your container either, and you will feel that heat building up. But when it's on something that's like this and you have got it spread thinly, the heat won't be a problem. You can actually demold this if you've got it in a mould, a shallow mould, within 4 hours. That's how quickly it sets up. Best working time for doing resins, 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. So make sure your room is about that. So that's about 75 to 85 Fahrenheit. And try and keep it at that temperature for as many hours as possible, particularly say the first 8 hours, although with this particular resin it's set up after 4, so it's really not a problem. All right, so this particular resin is advertised as non-toxic. It says it has no VSCs, which is volatile sulfur compounds. It doesn't mention no volatile organic compounds. I have written to them to ask them about that, and so far I haven't heard back. So they may have some, which is again why you want to wear a mask. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get on with this. I'm going to do probably 3 different videos. The one today, I'm just using the Platinum Art class, and I'm going to do one side, I'll do waves using the Just Resin, and on the other side, I'm going to use the Alumilite white, so you can see the difference. And I'm going to be using my heat embossing tool to blow out with. And also make sure that your piece is level before you start, which you can see mine is, that way and that way. So make sure that you're level. And when you're using your scale, you're going to zero it back to 0, because I've put my little container on there. And I only need about 20 mils for this. Normally I wouldn't recommend mixing up such a little amount because there's too much room for error. But because this is by weight, I shouldn't have any error. So first of all, I'm going to put in my part A, which is here. Now part A in most resins is usually pretty thick. So I like to put it in first if you're measuring by volume, because it's thick and you'll get a big glob going, and it's easier to get the part B accurate to measure to the same amount. So that's here. It's about at the 10 mil mark, which is 25 grams. So I'll put that much in. And now I'll go another 25 with part B, and you'll see that part B is a lot more fluid. If you're in a cold room or a cold climate, make sure that your resin's warm enough. So if it's not, you can put your bottle in a hot bath of water. Not a bath as in, but in a bucket, as long as you don't get any of that water into your resin. So I'm just going to bring this up to 50 grams. As you can see, it's so much easier to be accurate with the part B because it's so much more fluid. If I'd put that in first and then tried to match it up with the thicker part A, I may have ended up with too much of part A. Okay, so I'm now going to put my mask on. So hopefully you can hear me. If you can't, and when I play this back, then I will just do a voiceover. So I'm now just going to mix this up. And I'm taking a note of the time. It's 1:41. So mix it for at least 3 minutes. And also, it's a good idea just to mix slowly. And I like using these wooden paddle pop sticks because I can scrape them all the way around the edge. You want to make sure you've got all that part A up off the bottom and away from the edges. So and I also need to take note of the time, because this one, as I say, it starts setting up after 20 minutes. So I've literally got till 2 o'clock on my clock to have this done, which I will. So I'll just fast forward this. You don't need to watch me mixing my resin. Make sure during the mixing process that you, a couple of times, scrape the resin off your mixing implement, in case it's got some unmixed resin on there. And make sure you scrape around the edges. Make sure you do that a few times, and across the bottom as well. Okay, well I think we're pretty well right. We've got quite a lot of bubbles in there, but they will go, and I'll show you what to do about those. And the other thing is also to make sure you've got a dust-free environment as much as possible, because there's nothing worse than coming back, having a look at your piece the day later, and it's got a bit of dust right in the middle of it. So I'm just going to use these little cups now to make up my white. Don't need very much at all, particularly for this piece. If I was doing a bigger piece, like a cheese board, you still don't need very much actually. probably about 10 mils at the most. And I'm not doing that much here today, way below 10 mils. That wouldn't even be 5. So I'm only going to put a little bit of the white in there. So I'm mixing one up with the Just Resin. And in the next couple of days, I'll do another one of these for you. And I'll be using a different brand of resin, one that's not the quick set, just to show you the difference. So that's about all. So that's probably about 3 mils. So with the Alumilite white, I'm just going to put 1 drop in there. Don't want too much. Oops, that was 2 drops. That should be okay. And then with the Just Resin, I'm just literally going to put a little bit on the end of my stick like that. And that's what I'm going to put in there to mix up. You just want that to be dark enough that it's no longer see-through. So you want it to be quite opaque. So just mix that through really well. Hopefully I won't get these mixed up. So I'm going to, and on the back of my tile, I've simply got, just taped it off with masking tape. I've used 2 different ones, so we can see which one is the easiest to get off. And I also just use my little baby wipe just to wipe over, make sure there's no dust on there. So just finish mixing that one up. And this is the Just Resin. Just drizzling it down the side to make sure we can't see through it too easily. No, it looks alright. And the Alumilite. That looks a little bit thicker actually. So I might put a tiny bit more of the Just Resin in this one. Just use a stick to put a little tiny bit more in there. This is so nerve-wracking, doing this. Just give it a good mix in. Yep, I think that looks about right. Okay, so now, I'm just going to, it's not starting to get hot yet, but because of that depth, that could get hot quite quickly. So I'm just going to spread the, actually what I'm going to do first is spread the white, because when I'm doing my cheese boards, I always lay the white down first to get a bit of a border along the edge of whatever it is I've done. And I do about, it's about 1 centimetre, I guess, between 1/2 and 1 centimetre thick. Some people like to put it on top of the, to cover the board already with the clear resin, and then they just do their little white over the top of that. I find that sort of dilutes it too much. So today I'm just going to, and always, I just like to put the white down just straight onto the over the top of the painting that I've got. And of course this experiment today is not done in a lab or anything. It's nothing scientific, it's just me showing you what I do. And every time I do it, I seem to get something slightly different, so it's like paint pouring, you know. You can get close to the same thing, but every time it's slightly different. So that's Just Resin up that end. Okay, so now I'm going to spread on my resin. And what I do is I just go up to the edge of the white, just so it just touches it. Let it spread across. And I'm hoping by doing this demonstration that you can actually see the white when I've done it. That's going to be the theory, of course. And the beauty of this resin, because it sets up so fast, you can do your second layer, because I always do a second wave. You can do it on the same day. But it does get your heart racing to try and get it done quick enough. And particularly when you're videoing yourself doing it as well. The things we do. So that's been about 10 minutes now since I mixed that up. So I've only got about another 10 to go before it will start warming up, having its exothermic reaction. You need to look that word up so you'll understand how resin sets and why it gets hot. I'm just going to cover the edges here. Okay, so there's lots and lots of bubbles in there. So I'm just going to use my little brulee torch just to burst those bubbles. And now, today, I'm not going to use my heat gun. I'm just going to use my heat embossing tool. And what you want to do when you're blowing these waves out is to try and be as horizontal as possible as you blow out. And just gently warm up. Now, the way you get lacing is all in the heating. So you can also use your brulee torch to get some more lacing as you go. But you've got to be very careful because you can also burn the resin very quickly and your white will turn to yellow. So maybe we won't have to do that. We'll just see how we go. So horizontal, here we go. I'm just going to have to turn this around so I can do the other side so it'll get a bit messy. Keep my hands pretty clean. Okay, so now I'm doing the side that's got the just resin for the white. Okay, so you can see two quite different effects here. The just resin's got lots more lacing to it. The other ones have finer lacing. They're both laced up quite lovely. So I'm just going to show you what happens if I do hit that with the heat gun, but I'm not going to hold it on any area for too long because I don't want to burn it. I hope I'm not going to hold it on for too long. Here we go. We'll just see if that makes any difference in a minute. So that will continue to sort of develop. As you can see, it's beautiful, wavy. Look, they've both worked out very nicely. So I guess the trick is just being able to work out how thick to do your resin and how much colour to put in. But you saw how much I did. It wasn't very much at all. I'm just going to put this white along the edge here, just so I can actually use this tile as a placemat, not a placemat, as a coaster, a large coaster. And with the resin we've used today, the Platinum Art class, it does have a heat resistance up to 100 degrees centigrade, which is enough for a hot cup of coffee, but I wouldn't use it as a trivet. Whereas the other resin I'm going to use in a couple of days has a heat resistance up to 240. So you could use it as a for a trivet. Okay. So you can see there, lots of beautiful lacing. It's worked very well for me. I'm just going to try and do that edge without having to pick it up and turn it over again. Okay, so there you go, guys. So what I would normally do, I'd come back, burst any bubbles with my heat relay torch, and I'll come back and keep checking on that for the next 5 minutes, make sure there's no dust or any bubbles on it. Just want to blow that bit there off, actually, it's dragging back in. And then I will cover that with, I've got a clear, one of these Sistina clear, I can't show you actually, it's just a clear container, storage container that says it's clear, but it's actually not completely clear, but you can see through it to see if there's any bubbles or anything that you can correct over the next few minutes. But this sets up so fast, I won't have much time for that anyway. I'm just going to blow that bit off. It's already starting to get quite thick, and I'll show you here with the little bit that I've got left. It's starting to thicken up and warm up. I can feel that heating up in there as we're approaching the 20-minute mark. Okay, so any bits that are dripping off, I always like to wipe off any drips, because that helps to stop the resin being dragged off. So any drips, not too many drips on here today actually, I've done pretty well. And then to clean up, I'm just going to use the baby wipes. I'll wipe out my containers, I'll wipe off the little sticks, and they'll be ready to go again. Okay, so I'll be back in a couple of hours just to see how that sets up. And I will do another video on what I do about dust, although I can see there's a little bit of dust in there now. So all I do is I get my meat skewer and come down, have a look at where that bit of dust is, gently tap on it and come back up, and hopefully that will have got it off. If I ever see like 3 little dots in a row, or 4, I'll be pretty sure that that's not bubbles and it's probably a piece of lint, in which case I just go underneath the bubbles and lift it up, and it's usually a piece of lint that's gone across there. So I'm just checking to make sure I've got my edges covered. Just got to get your eye at the right angle to sort of get the light shining so you can see that you haven't missed any edge pieces. I think I could do with a little bit more on the edge here, even though we're starting to set up. Just making sure those edges are all nice, because I am going to use this. I think they're pretty good. And any resin you've got left over, like this little bit that I've got, I just have my little crystal moulds nearby, like this little one, and I just put some glitter in it, fill that up and put it into the mould, and then I've got some pretty crystals my grandkids always love. Just want to move that bit over the edge a bit there. Alrighty, so I'll see you back here in 4 hours, and we can do our second coat. And I'm going to cover this over in the meantime. So I'll just put that cover on. There we go. So that's the Sistina cover that's almost clear. Now I can see through. I'll check in 5 minutes just to make sure. If I was doing a slower set resin, I check about 15 minutes, then 15 minutes again, then 15 minutes again, just looking through without lifting the lid to see if I can see any dust or bubbles. If I can't see any, then I don't lift up the lid. But if I can, then I'll fix them. With this, because it sets so quickly, basically now it's almost too late to do anything. So just whatever there is, there is. Okay, I'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye. Well, it's now been 2.5 hours since I left this piece, and as you can see, it's totally hard and set up. So I could actually do my second coat now. I just don't have time, and I'll come back and do that tomorrow morning for you. But I just wanted to show you the result of what we've got here so far. So this end here was the Alumilite white resin dye. As you can see, it's created some gorgeous lacing there. So when we do our second coat, where I'll put another line and another wave, it'll be great. And I'm liking my background. I just did that really so that the white would show up, and it's actually turned out really lovely. That the blue there, the light blue, I'm not even sure what I used. I just whacked some paints down. So really pretty. And this end here is the end where I used the Just Resin pigment paste. It hasn't formed quite as well, but it has created lacing, as you can see. There's no doubt about that. That's lacing for sure. It's just thinned out a little bit, probably more than I would have liked, and I think that's just that I didn't put quite enough of the pigment into my resin. So it's something you can play around with, and you know, just test those out for yourself to work out how much you need to put in. But next time I will put a bit more of that into it so that it holds its shape a bit better. Okay, so that's it for now, guys. I'll put this video up, and we'll come back tomorrow and I'll do the second coat, and I'll do a new video for you for that. Okay, so I'll see you back here in Studio 33 in the not too distant future. Until then, stay safe. Bye bye.